Welcome to another episode. Today I'm doing a response video. I'll be responding to a video put out by Catholic Answers, which contains some arguments against reincarnation. The video features Trent Horn, who is a bright young Christian philosopher. He's well known on the YouTube philosophy of religion scene. Before we get into that, you may be wondering what's with the black eye. I was at work the other day and my drill got caught. I was drilling a hole in a steel frame to pull some electrical wires through, and the drill kicked back and whacked me in the head. I had to get some stitches in my eye. Luckily the eyebrow hides the stitches, so it's not too visible. I upgraded my drill recently and it's ridiculously powerful. Plus I had it in low gear, so it had way too much torque.
Reincarnation, which literally means to be made flesh again, is the belief that after death the soul lives on in another body. But the Catechism states it is appointed for men to die once. There is no reincarnation after death.
He started out by stating that reincarnation is rejected by Catholic dogma. Catholics have a church authority which gives dogmatic decrees, and one of these decrees is a rejection of reincarnation. Protestants, on the other hand, are more open to different interpretations of the Bible, and if it could be shown that the Bible gives clear indication that reincarnation is the case, they may be swayed. I do think there is a debate to be had there. There's a few references in the Bible which seem to suggest reincarnation. I mentioned some of them in the other video, which I'll have linked in the description, where I gave some evidence for reincarnation. In this video, I'm just going to focus on the logical arguments and any relevant evidence.
Members of the early church offered 3 reasons to reject the idea of reincarnation. First, in the 4th century, St. Ambrose said that it would be impossible that the soul which rules man should take on itself the nature of a beast so opposed to that of man. In other words, despite what you might see in movies, the migration of souls between human and animal bodies is as impossible as procreation between humans and animals.
I personally think this is a particularly weak argument, but I should be fair and point out that this doesn't seem to be a focus for Trent Horn. It seems that he's just making a short, succinct video presenting some traditional Christian arguments in an accessible format. Likely, if Trent Horn dedicated some time to this, he could formulate a more robust version of the argument. I think part of why Christians think this is a good argument and Hare Krishnas don't, or people from Eastern traditions in general don't, is a difference in what we understand the word soul to mean. Many Christians seem to include in the word soul a number of things which Hare Krishnas, at least, attribute to the body, to a temporary identity. This isn't to say that the soul doesn't have these personal features which the Christians think are part of the identity of the soul, but it's to say that the particular form that these personal features take in this body is something external to the soul. And actually, we don't know our true spiritual identity. This is something that's uncovered through a process of spiritual purification. And we go through these lives in various other forms we might take, expressing different personalities in order to learn and grow as souls, taking on different roles. And our true identity, which we hold in the spiritual world eternally, is uncovered once we are sufficiently spiritually advanced. This discussion was actually had quite in depth on my channel recently between the Catholic physicist Stephen M. Barr and the Vedanta philosopher Akandati Das. I'll have a link to that one in the description too. Here's the one-line argument one more time.
In the 4th century, St. Ambrose said that it would be impossible that the soul which rules man should take on itself the nature of a beast so opposed to that of man.
One major problem for this argument is found where it bumps into empirical reality. The trouble for the defender of the argument is to come up with criteria for human and animal traits, which includes what they want to include and excludes what they want to exclude. This is an impossible task because for any criteria you can devise, you'll end up with some humans being classed as animals. There's many cases we see of mental illness causing people to lose their rational faculties, their memories, or anything else you could use to define someone as having a human soul. However, when it comes to the Vaishnava idea of a soul, this problem does not apply. If we define the soul as something much more simple, that the basic form of consciousness which animates the body, then we don't have this definitional or empirical problem. The reason why a human could, through mental illness, lose their rational faculties is because while they're in that particular body, that body and brain is a filter for their expression of their qualities in this life. When they leave the body, then they can get some of those faculties back in a spirit form. They can take on a new body, and then they are limited or given abilities based on the new body they take on. However, when it comes to the Vaishnava conception of the soul, we don't run into this problem. If we define the soul as the basic unit of consciousness found in all living entities, then we don't have a definitional problem. Wherever you find life, you find a Jiva Atma, the Sanskrit word for the soul. The reason mental illness can take away rational faculties is because these bodies are like VR headsets, which not only augment our abilities and access to sense data, but also augment our access to rational faculties. When a soul in a body with a diseased brain leaves that body, they also lose those limitations. This seems to be supported by a phenomenon known as terminal lucidity, where people on their deathbed in compromised states develop temporary lucidity. Someone with severe dementia could, for a couple of hours, develop the ability to sit up and have clear, lucid conversations with their loved ones before departing. The last thing I want to say in response to this first argument is that it's not actually an argument against reincarnation in general. It's only an argument against certain forms of reincarnation, which includes souls transmigrating across different species. If someone wanted to say reincarnation is the case and you can only ever take birth as humans, then this argument would not apply.
Second, humans don't behave as if they possess souls that live before the birth of their bodies. The 3rd century ecclesial writer Tertullian put it this way: if souls depart at different ages of human life, how is it that they come back again at one uniform age? For all men are imbued with an infant soul at their birth. The absence of animals and infants who act like mature adults is evidence against the theory of reincarnation. Of course, a defender of reincarnation could say that although a person's soul inhabits a new body, his memories and personality do not. But this makes reincarnation the practical equivalent of not surviving death. It also raises the question St. Irenaeus asked in the 2nd century. If we don't remember anything before our conception, how do advocates of reincarnation know we've all been reincarnated?
So there's a few things there. I'll start by replying to the last point, which was that if we can't remember our past lives, we can't use memories as evidence for reincarnation, which is certainly the case, but that's not an argument against reincarnation. It's simply to point out one particular area where evidence is lacking. The trouble is, it's not a place where we would expect to find evidence necessarily were reincarnation true. However, there are many cases of children who do report memories of past lives. Researchers have compiled and rigorously analyzed thousands of such cases and produced a respectable body of evidence. In many cases, a previous personality was identified which matches the description given by these children, and the children are, in many cases, able to walk around villages they've never been to as if they know it, and know personal details about friends and relatives of this previous personality. In some cases, they find birthmarks on these children which match wounds on the body of the dying previous personality. And these children also have some personality traits in common with these previous personalities. Now I'll go back to that last clip and respond to it bit by bit.
Second, humans don't behave as if they possess souls that live before the birth of their bodies.
So here again, the disagreement over metaphysics comes up. As I said before, many Christians like to include in the definition of the soul things which members of Eastern traditions would tend to include in the body. So here Trent is presenting the idea that because humans are not born already knowing how to speak and walk and conduct business and so many other things, that it doesn't appear that they've lived before. However, on the idea that the soul has certain abilities which are filtered or limited by the body, we don't have this problem. A relevant point here is the Hare Krishna idea that this world is intended to deliver sensory experiences to living entities. The purpose of these experiences is to help us learn and grow as souls. The reason why we might have restricted faculties for stages of these learning processes is the same reason why when you're in math class, you might forget other things that are going on in the world and just concentrate on what you're learning. We're here to learn things. We're not here to exhibit the fullness of our being. Among the experiences which this world is designed to deliver is going through infancy all the way through adulthood. The process of growing old and going through those different stages teaches us humility, and many other good qualities are open for us to develop by going through those stages.
The 3rd century ecclesial writer Tertullian put it this way: if souls depart at different ages of human life, how is it that they come back again at one uniform age? For all men are imbued with an infant soul at their birth. The absence of animals and infants who act like mature adults is evidence against the theory of reincarnation.
Another point I'd like to make here is based on arguments from the hard problem of consciousness. Christians, along with many other spiritualists, will like to use the hard problem of consciousness to use arguments which establish the fact that the brain cannot explain the existence of consciousness. We must appeal to some spiritual substance to explain qualitative, unified, subjective experience. The trouble for the Christian is these arguments don't get us to the soul being the cause of things which the body and brain can explain. I think it makes far more sense to use the brain to explain the things which it very clearly can explain, such as our cognitive abilities, and to reserve for the soul those abilities and qualities which cannot be explained by the brain. Of course, arguments based on the hard problem of consciousness would be a topic for another video. I'm just making a point here about how they relate to conceptions of the soul.
Of course, a defender of reincarnation could say that although a person's soul inhabits a new body, his memories and personality do not.
The trouble with this argument comes when we apply it to people who have suffered severe head injuries and developed amnesia, where they lost their memories. In some cases, they may have lost some of their personality traits as well and taken on new personality traits. According to his logic here, such a person would have ceased existing and a new person would have come about.
But this makes reincarnation the practical equivalent of not surviving death.
I don't think anyone would agree with this logic as applied to the amnesia patient. Imagine a mother whose child suffers brain trauma, loses his memories, and takes on a different personality. I don't think such a mother would go around telling people or would think to herself that her child has died and a new person has come to exist in a similar body. Rather, I think what she would think is that her child has suffered a brain injury and is in a mentally diseased state. Philosophically, I disagree with the idea that not carrying on your memories or personality means you cease to exist. I would go with a simple view of identity, which is that if it's the same first-person experience, then it's the same person or soul. What that means is if it's me having the experience, then it's still me. And similarly, if it's you having the experience, it's still you, even if you don't have a continuity of memory or personality. Although on the Vaishnava conception, the memories still do exist. It's just that we can't access them at this stage in our existence. When we leave our body and are at points between lives, we may have access to all our memories. And when we're in the spiritual world, we may access those memories which are interesting or relevant to our life there. As for personality traits, there is personality carryover between lifetimes. It's just more subtle impressions and tendencies found in the soul, rather than hardened aspects of personality. It's like the subtle things which give rise to the hardened personality aspects which the soul carries, and it can develop those in a new body, or it has the opportunity in a new body to develop in a different way. This is necessary for us to learn and grow as souls. Otherwise, we would become ossified in some states rather than being able to learn and grow and move through different experiences to ultimately become pure in our love of God. Another way of describing this is to compare it to dream states. At night when we're sleeping, we have all sorts of dreams, and while in those dreams, we lose awareness of our life in this world and we're just absorbed in the dream. The Vedic idea of this world and this life here is very similar. This life is something like a dream in that it's temporary and it's not a full expression of who we are, and it's also not giving us access to all of our cognitive abilities or awareness. So just as when we're in a dream, the fact that we lose our memories of this life doesn't mean we're a different person. Nobody wakes up from a dream and thinks that that person who had a dream was a different person from me because they didn't have all my memories and personality traits. And of course, in a dream, you have a substantial amount of your personality traits still, perhaps more than you have from one lifetime to the next, but it's a similar kind of carryover.
Third, there's the population argument. Proponents of reincarnation claim new souls are never created or destroyed. Instead, souls are only reborn into other bodies. But in Tertullian's words, if the living come from the dead, just as the dead proceed from the living, then there must always remain unchanged one and the self-same number of mankind. He noted, and modern science has confirmed, that there's been a gradual growth of the human population. This growth can only be explained by new souls coming into existence and conflicts with the idea of perpetual reincarnation of the same souls into different bodies.
I see this as a particularly weak argument. The trouble is, it involves a lot of unstated assumptions, and assumptions which the proponent of reincarnation need not take, and which are generally not found on worldviews which advocate reincarnation. For obvious reasons, because if they did hold these assumptions, then there would be logical contradictions. The key assumption is that humans have to take birth as humans, can't take birth as other creatures, and vice versa. Or that humans can only take birth on Earth, they can't take birth in other planets. If you have various places throughout the cosmos where souls could take birth, then the rise in the number of humans taking birth here could be explained by souls from elsewhere coming here, and there could be a commensurate decline in population elsewhere. And if we add to it the idea that souls from different types of species could take birth as humans and vice versa, then the real problem is trying to explain the decline in the population of bugs. Because we could have bugs taking birth as humans, and that would explain the rise in the number of humans. But then there's been a far larger decline in the population of bugs. And how do we explain that? For the Hare Krishna worldview, we don't have to worry about this because there's all sorts of different places where souls can take birth, and they can also have longer or shorter periods between lifetimes. So it's really not an issue. That's all for this video. Feel free to drop a comment and let me know if there's any other videos you want me to respond to. If you like this sort of thing, be sure to subscribe. I'm open to engaging in the comments if you've got any pushback or any other arguments you'd like me to address. And I'll see you in the next one. Hare Krishna.